Welcome to the Football Hour, bringing you results, goals and updates from Europe's top leagues. Only on Radio Fabrique 107.5 FM and broadcasting around the world on radiofabrique.at. There's a huge game between Leicester and Manchester United. The ramifications are huge. Well, I mean, Man United just need a draw. A draw works for Leicester if Chelsea lose at Wolves, which is also a huge game. We'll come back to that too. Yeah, I mean, transfer ramifications. If United don't make it, would the players from Leicester, for example, Maddison or Chilwell, would they then sign for Man United? Fino?
Yeah, I mean, I think the Leicester Man United game is easily the tastiest game of the day. And yeah, as you say, Chilwell and Maddison are easily their two prized assets, and it'll be interesting to see if Leicester get Champions League qualification, will they stay and continue to fight with Leicester, or do they move on to pastures new?
I think it's a really interesting game, this one, isn't it? Because when you look at Leicester, they had such a fantastic start to the season. But all of us as Liverpool fans, there was one stage where it looked like they might possibly be like the biggest rival to Liverpool. We're all thinking, oh my God, Brendan Rodgers, imagine if they were the side, But no, really, really striking how great they were at the start. I think it was 14 games maybe to December where they won almost all of them. They eventually lost to Liverpool. I think they lost to Manchester United, but they were so good. But then that dip, right? And the dip, I think, started even before the break that we had. They haven't been good since the break. We've all seen that. They've lost that lead. But, wow, it's fascinating to see what's going to happen in this game.
Yeah, Man United have, for me, been absolutely amazing since lockdown. Apart from the Chelsea, I think they started off with Tottenham as 1-1 draw after lockdown. Then they went on a huge run, and they, Rashford and Martial looked electric up front, full of pace, scoring goals for fun. The signing of the season as well from Lisbon. And then, I expect them to roll over Chelsea. They lost. Of course, they still have, the backup, the comfort possibly of winning the Europa League to get into the Champions League. But if you're Man United, you really want to be finishing in the top four with the money they've spent. And
yeah, I mean, I think, Man United, I think, are unbeaten since, February, late January, that sort of time. So really, Ole Gunnar Solskjaer has done an excellent job. And yeah, you're looking to hopefully qualify for the Champions League and be a Champions League team once again. And again, as we said, the transfer ramifications could be huge.
It's funny though, isn't it? I was thinking about this today, and of course you're right. So they desperately want to be back in the Champions League. Why? Obviously, if you're a Man United fan, if you're at the club, it makes such a difference. But very occasionally, right, it can sometimes work in your favour not to be. And this would be clutching at straws if you're a Man United fan, I know. But I was just reminded of the fact of how important the signing Sadio Mane was for us. And when we signed Sadio Mane, it was basically because we hadn't qualified for the Champions League, right? And he was, in many ways, supposedly the second choice, but he was the sort of player from the Premier League that we turned to because we couldn't attract any of those bigger names because Liverpool weren't in the Champions League that year. So sometimes it's just odd, isn't it, that it doesn't work out exactly the way you think it's going to work. But no, of course, Man United want to be back there, yes.
Yeah, plus if you're not in the Champions League, you also have the advantage of resting players midweek and not going on trips around to, for example, to Russia or Turkey, and then there's less jet lag and the players are fresher come the weekend. But if you're Man United, I mean, the other thing is, if Man United don't make the Champions League, they're still Man United. They're still one of the biggest teams in the world. If Leicester don't make it, they will definitely have more trouble attracting players, coming into the Premier League, whereas Man United may not be. But then Solskjaer, he spent money, the club have backed him. And they have been amazing since lockdown, but if they don't win the Europa League and don't finish in the Champions League, is his job then under threat?
Well, it's an interesting question, isn't it? I mean, he's been given a little bit of time. It's been good, actually, to see that they have given him some time, hasn't it? It did look for a little while like Manchester United might turn into just almost any other club, where you go into those cycles of not giving each manager enough time. With Solskjaer, he talks a lot about the journey. Always says that we're on a journey. And actually he said, and I think this is fair enough, if it doesn't go our way today, that doesn't mean that journey is over. And I think that's true. I think they will keep him next season. Whether they would persevere with him until the end of the season is perhaps another question. But I think he's done enough. You talked about the signing of the season there, and maybe we'll get into that as a separate thing later. I don't know. Yeah. But no, they have been better. they have shown, I think, resilience. They've shown, and some spark as well, right? So recently we've seen Man United start to look a bit more like Man United. And I think as a fan, anyway, that's really what you want. You just want your team to play in that way that feels like it's part of the mythology around you as a team, and sometimes the results don't happen. Sometimes you do get pipped at the post. But if Man United are playing again like Manchester United, then surely that shows that they're on the right track again.
Yeah, I think so. If you think about Man United, you think of this huge kind of global powerhouse of football. And for the last couple of seasons, or maybe the last kind of 5 seasons, they've really been kind of underperforming. And you've seen that with the fans. Even when Man United have been turning this around, they've been getting results, they've been grinding out results. The fans sometimes still are a bit restless, still looking for that Man United of old. But you also have to look at that Man United of old and say that that's a complete, an anomaly. Like, that's an incredible team. That class of '92 going into, the later Ferguson years, that's a ridiculous team.
I mean, Fergie was given time to build those teams, those Champions League winning teams and the treble winning teams. He was given plenty of time. United have been through Van Gaal, been through Mourinho, and Solskjaer's in now, and Moyes as well. So they've got to really stick with someone, and I think they understand that's the way now. And, if Solskjaer is the man, who knows? I mean, didn't he go down with Cardiff? Did he go down with Cardiff? I think he might have, yeah. Mm-hmm. Might have went down with Cardiff. So, I thought if they won the FA Cup and the Europa League and finished in the top 4, it would have been a very, very successful season. But now they're out of the FA Cup. If they lose today and Chelsea win, and they don't win the Europa League, then you might think maybe Ole's got to go, but who knows? We'll see. Jamie Vardy is 33 years of age. He's top of the goal scoring charts. If he finishes with a Golden Boot today, he'll be the oldest player in the top flight to win the Golden Boot since 1948.
Yeah, it's an incredible run from Vardy, and obviously everyone knows the story of where he's come from. And yeah, I think Vardy, he's 2 goals ahead of Danny Ings. And it's very difficult, you would imagine, in one game for Ings to catch that. So yeah, hopefully congratulations in advance.
I don't know what you're talking about there. Mo Salah's going to bang in 6 today, but we'll talk about that a bit later. I would have thought.
Is Mo Salah even playing? Would they not rest him today?
No, I think he will be one of the players who's not affected by alcohol consumption. So I think he's got every chance of actually making it to the first 11 today.
Point. Yeah, very good point. Yeah, we should also say once again that Man United still are in the Europa League. I think they beat Linz 4 or 5-0 away, so they're in the next round. They're probably favourites. I think they're favourites for the Champions or for the Europa League. So that's the backup plan. But of course, they want to go Route 1. Another huge game is at Stamford Bridge, where Chelsea take on Wolves. Chelsea need a win to guarantee a top 4 place. Chelsea are, of course, still in the Champions League, although for I don't know how many more days because they were hammered by Bayern. They're in the cup final against Arsenal next week, so they got a lot going on. They've had a pretty good season, considering Lampard didn't have that much money to spend or any money at all, I don't think, at the start of the season. But Wolves need to win because Tottenham are right behind Wolves, and that Europa League place. Wolves themselves are still in the Europa League. An interesting stat: Chelsea have been in the top 4 all season since October. Fino.
Yeah, I was surprised when you told me that earlier, because I've felt, as a fan looking on the outside in, that they've been a bit hit and miss over the course of the season. It's a young team; they haven't had the money to be able to strengthen the team, and yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens next season as you start to see the news of them going out and splashing the cash on new players.
I think they're an interesting side, aren't they, Chelsea? You look at them and you can obviously see that they're making progress. I think a lot of people have a bit more goodwill for them now. With the coach that they have and having not been able to sign the players, you look at them now and you sort of think, well, there's a team that's sort of doing pretty well. It'd be funny, won't it? Because if they do make it to the Champions League, everyone suspects that the money is going to come back then, that they're going to really make some statement buys. And of course, they already have. But you think that there's going to be a lot of outlay then. At the same time, we're also suspecting that financial fair play, those rules will be relaxed, or that there won't be the same stringency there that we've had in the past, and they should be able to spend a lot of money. So it's quite funny, actually. It's like, enjoy Chelsea as being not quite an underdog, but sort of like a fan favourite for a little bit, because probably if they do get back in the Champions League, we'll all get back to going, they're just buying their way to success.
They're buying their way, yeah, they're buying trophies, yeah. I mean, you have to bear in mind also, the Chelsea at one stage, a couple of seasons ago, had up to 30 players out on loan. So these guys, they've come back. The Tammy Abrahams and these guys come back. Pulisic is a very good signing, but I don't think they've quite replaced Hazard yet. And there's a bit of steel needed, maybe in defence. Giroud is, for me, he should be gone next season. He's got a few goals in the last few weeks, but if you're a Chelsea striker, you got to think in the mould of a Drogba or a Shevchenko or someone.
I think that's interesting. Sorry, just to pick you up on a point there. Yes, you said. I mean, look at Chelsea defensively, and I think you look at the goals conceded. This time it's 54 goals conceded in the league this season, and that is a lot, right? That's you're looking at kind of that's not even mid-table, defensively. So 54 goals conceded, and this is not necessarily a team where you sort of think they are, absolutely destined for success or anything like that. Someone made a point the other day after the Liverpool game. That they almost look like Liverpool looked a few years ago. There's lots to like about them. They look like a really decent team. There's lots of exciting players, like you say. They had young players coming back and stuff. But to me, they look like they've got 2 or 3 years to go before they're bang on again.
Yeah, it's going to take some time. But I mean, for me, the way Chelsea are set up, the game the other night at Anfield epitomises it. They scored 3 or 4 goals, 3 goals, 4 goals, and conceded 5 against Liverpool. They look good. They look bad. It's hard to predict what's going to happen, but I still strongly fancy them to win the cup final next week as well.
Yeah, I would say so. And if you look at Wolves as well as their opponents, obviously they've had a good season, a strong season, especially in Europe. Their fans have had, a great time jollying around Europe whilst we could. And Wolves won't be obviously rushing off onto their holidays as they've got to face Olympiacos as well. And if you think about the team that Espirito Santo's built, it's been around Portuguese and Spanish players, which in the Championship was definitely a bit of a risk, and it seems to have paid off. They've brought in Raul Jimenez. He's done exceptionally well this season. They've got Ruben Neves as captain, or they took him from Porto, and he's chipped in with some really important goals as well. So I don't think that by any means that this is a walkover for Chelsea. I think this is going to be a really difficult game, and I think they'll need to set up to take the 3 points.
I think that's super interesting, and of course the other player, Traore. What an interesting player that is.
He shouldn't be playing scrum half.
You would think, right? I saw this terrible story today. I can't believe it's true. He says someone said they put baby oil on his arms, so that it makes harder to grab and harder to stop as he runs past you. But that's certainly one of those players. I think he's an extraordinary, like I say, it's an extraordinary character. And I did hear the most amazing numbers about him. Sort of. Perhaps next time we'll get into transfer speculation and so on. But the numbers I've been reading, people have been talking about 100 and something million, for this player. But he is one of those players who gives you something really different, right? And I think there's a lot of value to be had for that. I'm not saying anyone's worth 120 million. I'm not saying, that he necessarily is. Absolutely not. But one interesting player. And yes, I really like this Wolves team. I think they're one of those teams, when they've played Liverpool this season and when I've seen them in other games, you sort of think, this is a real football team. There's something about them that make it difficult in every area, that pose questions that perhaps other teams don't. And I'm actually slightly disappointed. If I could have chosen one other thing to be right this time, I would have loved it if they'd still had a chance of the Champions League going into this game, because I think that would have made it very interesting as well. And for a long time, they really did look like they might challenge for it, didn't they? I
mean, they couldn't be more far off, because, if they win today, and let's say, for example, if Leicester lose, they're level on points with Leicester, or even, United, or Chelsea possibly. They're that close. So, they have money. Next season, who's to say they don't push on and try and go for the Champions League? Because if they don't, and that conversation is not have guys like Traore, there'll be people knocking on the door saying, look, we need this guy, Okay, guys, we're just going to quickly move on to a massive game. There's a few massive games, but this one, West Ham against Aston Villa. Now, before we go into it, last week, Villa were more or less dead and buried. And I watched Watford beat Newcastle. They got a very lucky penalty. They were safe. But 2 results happened. Watford got destroyed by Man City, and then somehow Aston Villa beat Arsenal 1-0 with a really dogged, rugged performance. And now they're ahead. If Villa win, it doesn't guarantee. All they have to do is match Watford's result. But if Watford win by 2 goals or more, and Villa win, then Watford are safe. So it's a little bit mixed up. I mean, Fino, you're the West Ham man.
Yeah, I mean, thankfully West Ham are now safe, thanks to their point against Man United. And as a West Ham fan, I'm very glad to be sitting back and relaxing rather than being on tenterhooks. Aston Villa, you would have assumed were dead and buried, but they've managed to claw their way. at the moment claw their way out of the relegation zone. And I think it's a really interesting game. I think the last game of the season, you always have this kind of weird dynamic where you might have players that are thinking about what's going on, thinking about what's thinking about what's next, thinking about preseason, that sort of thing already. Whereas you have teams that are fighting for their Premier League survival.
Indeed. Then there's also the likes of Jack Grealish, who's been absolutely brilliant all season. I'm not a fan of him as a person, but I think as a player, he's been their star man, and there'll be a lot of big teams, particularly Man United, looking at the likes of Jack Grealish. If Villa go down, if they stay up, will he stay? It's
interesting. Yeah. It's interesting, isn't it? I don't know too much about them. I can't pretend to be the sort of person who watches every game. But yeah, I did watch Villa against. Some people might remember the Liverpool's game against Villa earlier in the season, which kind of summed up their season in a little way towards that, where Liverpool really didn't play very well. Aston Villa were amazing. Aston Villa were absolutely incredible, and they needed those 2 late goals from Liverpool to grab a win earlier in the season. And sometimes it's very hard for me to see. Understand really how Villa are still in trouble when you as a fan where you don't necessarily watch you don't watch every game of every other opposition. It's not like we're being we're being paid to do this or anything like that as pundits. You just watch the games you watch, and it always astonishes me as a fan where you've seen someone who's really impressed you, albeit early in the season, and then you see them in such terrible trouble towards the season. So I'm just really surprised actually to see Villa still in trouble, and I'm actually quite glad. I think that they've got a really good chance of getting out of it.
They spent heavily as well. They spent a lot of money. They spent a lot more money than from the mid-table teams, but of course, as you know, money doesn't always mean success. And I honestly think Villa are staying up, and I think Arsenal. Although saying that, it can go anywhere. I think Bournemouth are gone, but we'll come into that in a second. Fino, you obviously think West Ham are going to win.
I would hope so, but I think to add to your point, Kevin, about Villa, I think Villa are the classic team where every game against the top 4 is a cup final. And so the game before and the game after, they're already thinking about how they're going to play against a Chelsea, a Man City, and Liverpool, etc. And then the game after, they've ran themselves into the ground, so they're not able to pick themselves back up. And if they can grab a point or grab 3 points, it sends the fans home happy. But then you play your bread and butters. You play a West Ham at the London Stadium in mid-January, and you can't pick up those points. It puts you into a pretty perilous position.
Anytime I've seen West Ham this season, I watched them against Newcastle recently in a 2-2 draw. Jared Bowen, what a player.
Yeah, phenomenal. I think a really great signing, a really shrewd signing. West Ham spent big over the past couple of seasons. You've got players like Felipe Anderson, you've got players like Yarmolenko, who in theory should be able to set the Premier League alight, and it's not necessarily worked. Again, obviously you've had a lot of managerial changes. Moyes has come in. He's definitely solidified the defence. Ogbonna's been an absolute colossus in the centre of the centre defence. You've obviously got Declan Rice, young up and coming English starlet, I suppose.
Wasn't he Irish a while back?
No comment. Then you've got Jared Bowen up top. You've also got Mikel Antonio, who since lockdown, I don't know what he was doing during lockdown, but he's been phenomenal since. He scored 4 goals against Norwich. He scored goals against Chelsea and Man United. Really important goals. Hopefully West Ham will be in a good position going forward for next season.
Indeed. Okay, guys, we're going to do a little preview of Arsenal and Watford next. You are live on Radio Fabrique 107.5 FM and around the world on radiofabrique.at. This is the Football Hour with me, JP, Fino and Kevin, and we are discussing the Premier League final day. Next up is Arsenal, who host Watford. Arsenal really have nothing to play for. They got the cup final next week, and Mikel Arteta said that he will play. I'm holding my fingers up and making inverted commas, but basically he's saying that he'll play as strong a team as possible. Kevin, Watford, you said, have been through 4 managers this season. 3, was it? 4?
I think exactly. Yeah, I think they've sacked 3 managers this season. I think it was Javi Garcia, Quique Sanchez-Flores, and now Nigel Pearce. Now, I love the idea that someone said to me this week that they're using a Watford manager as a unit of time now. So, like a very small ephemeral thing could be referred to as a Watford manager. Yeah, I don't know. Again, this is going to sound like me saying the same thing every time, and you'll get sick of me saying this. But again, Watford stuffed Liverpool. 3-0.
Yeah.
Somebody had to.
Yes, exactly. It was about time, and I'm sure Arsenal fans all over the world rejoiced, and quite rightly too. yeah, it's again extraordinary to me that we're in this situation when you see a team that can turn it on. But I guess, Fino, what you said before, like maybe it's not about those glamour games sometimes, right? It's about the bread and butter. So
Exactly, and they haven't beaten anybody away from home above them in the table all season. So, on paper, this looks like an easy Arsenal win, but, again, how many of those Arsenal players have their eyes on next week's crucial FA Cup final?
Definitely. I'm surprised that they sacked Nigel Pearson because, okay, he hadn't had a great run, but if you remember the season before Leicester won the title, they were in big trouble, and Pearson basically put them on an amazing run where they were just hammering everybody, and, I thought he was the man to keep them up. And, I watched them against Newcastle, probably one of Pearson's second last game, I think. 2 lucky penalties, didn't look great, but defensively they were, they seemed to be better than Newcastle, rugged, hard to beat, quick to the tackle. I reckon, I think a lot of pressure. I think Arsenal, even if they put out a weaker team, Arsenal will beat them.
Yeah, I think the dangerous thing about Watford is, what do they have to lose? They can go all out. If they lose a goal, then they're going to go all out. And, Arsenal aren't necessarily the stoutest of defences. You would look to, if you get a bit of pressure on them, then they could potentially crack. And, Hayden Mullins is caretaker at the moment. He's stayed up with West Ham in 2007 on the final day thanks to Carlos Tevez, and he's been talking in the press this week about how his players need to have that same kind of mentality that, yes, we will stay up, because if you go into the game beaten, then Arsenal will take 3 or 4 off of you.
I think there's one other just interesting thing that's just sometimes forgotten, right? So we talk a lot at this stage of the season. Fans talk about it all the time. We always say, they've got nothing left to play for, mid-table sides. Actually, there's really quite a lot left to play for, because TV money being distributed the way it is, and particularly the overseas money, the overseas rights for the Premier League, which are enormous at the moment. I can't remember how many billions of pounds we're talking about. But anyway, that's distributed now on a scale based on your final league position, right? And I was just looking at the table there, and the way, without going into too many details about the permutations and so on, it just looks anyway that certainly there are a couple of places at play, maybe 3 for a team like Arsenal. You're looking at about 10 million quid for something like that. So actually, you talk about nothing to play for, about 10 million pound on the table. It's something at least, and I bet the backroom staff anyway. Oh, sorry. The suits anyway are giving them every motivation to get up in there to get a result in that game.
Yeah, definitely. If Newcastle can beat Liverpool today, which they should, hopefully we can stay in 13th ahead of Crystal Palace. But then again, I can't see Mike Ashley giving any bonuses to anybody. Hopefully the club is sold at the end of the season. There's another team involved in the relegation battle, although I think we can safe to say it's that they've got a really uphill struggle. Bournemouth are away to Everton. They will stay up if they win, and both Villa and Watford lose. Bournemouth have lost the last 2 games. Eddie Howe's a great coach, likeable guy, but I think this is the end of the road for them in the Premier League.
Yeah, I think, they're also relying on 2 other results going their way. It looks really unlikely. They've done well, they've showed a bit of fight, but again, goes back to that cup final mentality. They've picked up points against Tottenham and Leicester. They were maybe unlucky to lose to Man City. But yeah, Everton haven't been beaten under Ancelotti at Goodison Park, so it looks
really?
Yeah, it looks very difficult. And we speak about Everton as kind of, well, obviously this season as Liverpool's, they've not necessarily been able to match Liverpool's strength. But yeah, they've spent a lot of money over the last kind of 12 months. They brought in Alex Iwobi from Arsenal. They're bringing in players at 25, 30 million that aren't necessarily providing the productivity that they need to be up the table.
Yeah, I've got no sort of special insight on that game. Who knows really? The only thing I'd say is for anyone who watched the last week of the Championship, how crazy that was. That almost anything can happen. So let's not rule it out. The permutations that were on show there, and then we had that last minute drama there as well. So it's not all done yet.
Very true. Leeds were promoted and then became champions without playing a game. At the very end, I think West Brom or Brentford could have went up on the last day. It was crazy stuff. Okay, moving on to the rest of the games. Burnley, who I think have had a fantastic season against Brighton. Now, just off topic, Kev, Brighton looks like they're going to sign Adam Lallana.
I heard that, yeah. I guess he fancies a trip back to the South Coast, really. Good for him, really. He's one of those players, you may remember that was the Suarez, when Suarez left, Liverpool spent like a lot of money. I think Liverpool had something like 80-odd million or something like that to spend. And, we were all really, I think it's fair to say they didn't necessarily, spend that money in the way that the fans, would have liked. They seem to buy sort of a mixed bag of players and stuff like that. Lallana, if memory serves, I think he was one of those players. And, he's good. He had his moments. There were times, he's one of those players, where you look at him and you think, there's a fantastic amount of talent in there. And I think, obviously, England fans, always wanted him to be that player. He was never quite that player for Liverpool, never quite that player for England, perhaps something like that. But one of those players, I know Jurgen Klopp rates him very highly behind the scenes. He's one of those players who's a bit of an example for the younger players. So I think, good on him. And I think if he gets a good couple of years there, I think he should enjoy the rest of his Premier League career.
Yeah, I definitely think, Brighton is a great place for him, as you said, on the South Coast, going back to kind of where he made his mark in the Premier League on the South Coast. And he'll get game time. He struggled to get game time over the last few seasons in that kind of behemoth of a Liverpool side. And so, yeah, I think it's a great move for all parties.
I thought he would have went back to Southampton.
Possibly, yeah. I mean... Who knows what the behind the scenes are with both Southampton and Lallana? Maybe there was conversations had and the numbers didn't make sense or whatever it was. But I still think it's a good move, and I think he still has some years left.
Well, he's 32, but another thing also is age and resale value. For example, Mike Ashley Andy Carroll is the first one that came in. Apart from that, you've got to be under 26, 27, so he's got to make some money off you. Crystal Palace, Tottenham, interesting game.
Definitely. I think, Tottenham are obviously still looking to hit that Europa League guaranteed spot. There's an interesting permutation that if they finish outside of the Europa League spots in the league, that Arsenal could potentially take the 7th place Europa League place away from them if they win the FA Cup final. So yeah, I mean, Tottenham, I think, have really flattered to deceive over the last kind of 12 months. They've really not been that team that went to the Champions League final. You have players like Dele Alli, who I don't think have necessarily hit the same heights. And it's a shame to see. I don't know whether or not it's the change in manager or, if it's something in the dressing room that's changed. You've obviously had players like Eriksen go. Maybe that was a strong, there was always bits and pieces in the press about, the business side of football with Tottenham, and you wonder if that's carrying over onto the pitch.
Feels like they're building a bit of momentum, doesn't it? It feels like, it was a really dodgy start to the season. It felt like they were going nowhere, particularly under Mourinho at first, but no, lately you look at them and you sort of think, actually, yeah, maybe players are fit again and so on. That looks like there's going to be a team next season, I think.
If they don't make Europe, if they don't make Europe, maybe 2 seasons, would Harry Kane look to go somewhere bigger?
There's a lot of talk about that, isn't there? About how long would he stay? And I kind of, we all like it when players are loyal to their clubs and so on. So I don't know. I suspect he probably would stay, to be honest. But no special insight there.
Yeah, I mean, he's settled with a young family. Also, who I don't see him necessarily going abroad. So who in England is going to use him in the way that Tottenham use him? You can really only think about Man United in that same kind of fashion. I don't think he's fast flowing enough for a team like Liverpool or Man City. And so, yeah, I mean, who's going to be able to afford his wages and his transfer value? It's definitely slim pickings.
Very good point, Fino. I mean, United, though, the minute under Solskjaer are kind of playing on the break as well, and they've got obviously Martial and Rashford, and that's all about pace too, so he wouldn't suit there. Man City at home to Norwich. City, for me, have been amazing, even though they've flattered to deceive sometimes this season, and they'll be kicking themselves. They'll be gunning for Liverpool and gunning for the title next season. It's got to be about the Champions League for them. Norwich relegated, right? This is a no-brainer. This is a 5-0, right?
Yeah, I'm sorry to say, I think this is the least important game of the day. Man City have been good this season, to be fair. It's just that they came up against a stronger Liverpool. Norwich, I watched them play against West Ham a couple of weeks ago, and they just looked, they looked disorganised. They looked like a team that were going down. It's a shame. I think they're a good club, but yeah, unfortunately, they couldn't get the results on the pitch.
Yeah, I think if you were looking at bets, You've seen Man City I've won 5-0, I think, like 4 times this season in the Premier League. I think they've won 4-0 3 times, something like that as well. They've made it to 8-0 so far in one game, but of course, haven't made it to 9, so maybe there's like a mark of pride there. Maybe they'll be going for double figures. That sounds terrible, but
definitely. And I think as well, this looks like it will be David Silva's last game for Man City. He's been a servant for that club for 10 years. He's a phenomenal player. So maybe the Man City players will find that extra gear for him as they then gear up to go into the Champions League.
Aguero is a huge loss. He's out for the rest of the season, out for the Champions League. Apparently, Jesus is unbelievable striker, but I just think that the presence Aguero has and his prowess in the box, and I think they're going to miss him big time. Didn't they beat Liverpool 4-0? Was it 4-0?
don't recall that one.
Okay, and then just finally, then Southampton, Sheffield United. Fino's got some really great stats about Southampton, how to turn things around. Sheffield United, for me, one of the teams of the season before lockdown. Just old school Irish, Scottish, English players, homegrown, stuck in, hard to beat, in your face, up and at them. And coming back out of the lockdown, they look like Man City were going to, even if they finish in the top 4, wouldn't be allowed in the Champions League. So then you're thinking 5th place will get them in. And Sheffield United just fell apart.
Yeah, I mean, Chris Wilder would be my vote for manager of the season. I think he's done a phenomenal job with Sheffield United. Southampton, a bit of a surprise package, a bit of kind of tale of two halves. In November they lost 9-0 to Leicester. They were in the relegation zone. It looks like they're going to finish just below mid-table. So it's a kind of a tale of two halves for Southampton. Obviously Danny Ings, as we said, he's 2 goals behind Jamie Vardy. They'll be looking to try and get him his goals. So yeah, it could be an interesting game there.
And of course, the game of the day at St James's Park, where the mighty Newcastle United are battling to keep 13th place against newly crowned champions Liverpool. Newcastle, for me, Steve Bruce has given the job at the start of the season. Like most Newcastle fans, we weren't happy, but we were shocked when he was actually given money that Rafa Benitez was not given. Andy Carroll was a good signing on and off the pitch, free transfer on a 1-year contract. £40 million for Joe Linton was absolutely ridiculous. He played here in Austria. He played for Rapid Vienna on loan from Hoffenheim, where he only scored 15 goals in the Austrian league. But on the other side, for me, Saint Maxime has been absolutely amazing. He's the reason why Newcastle are staying up, and I would be delighted if he stays next season. But I only think that's going to happen if the club is sold, and if it's not, I think he's the new Mane. Okay, guys, we're going to go into Liverpool a little bit. Kevin's going to give us his view of the season and 30 years of hurt and that kind of stuff. You are listening to the Football Hour with JP, Fino and Kevin. Liverpool are champions of England for the first time in 30 years. Kev, how does it feel?
Feels a bit overdue. Yeah, absolutely. I was let's see, this is going to be a confession of my age now, but I think I was 19 years old when Liverpool won it the last time. And it did, as people have said, it absolutely felt like that was just going to keep happening and keep happening and keep happening. And no one could believe that it could be quite this long. But I'm probably in a minority of one amongst Liverpool fans in that, yes, it's fantastic to be champions. It was absolutely wonderful. It was wonderful to finally get there without playing a game. It was wonderful to see the celebrations after the 5-3. It's almost, for me, though, the last 2 or 3 years where Liverpool have become this team that we are has almost been as important as the actual winning of the title, though. You know what I mean? Of course, like, the silverware is so important, and especially for Klopp, who, by his own admission, has this reputation for being the master of finishing second place. To actually get over the line first in the Champions League and now this has been fantastic. But the last 3 years have been fantastic, because suddenly it's a football team that feels like everyone would want to be like this football team. And it's been a long time, even though we got really close under Brendan Rodgers and once under Rafa Benitez, I think, or a couple of times. It's been a while since you'd think everyone would want to play for this football club. And that's been the most amazing thing. And I had just one other thing to say, summing up the season. I thought a lot about this, and I saw an old quote from Jurgen Klopp. And I can't remember it verbatim, but it was something like, football is a game where you make mistakes, right? Football is a game all about making mistakes. And one of the things I love about this Liverpool team is it's not perfect. Like, I go way back with Guardiola from when I lived in Spain and worked, for the media in Spain, and watched Guardiola and loved Guardiola as a player. I think Guardiola thinks of football as a thing that you can perfect. So I think he wants Man City to be perfect. He has in his mind, this Aristotelian idea of this of this perfect football team that just does everything right? And they win every game. And we talked before about Man City winning 4-0 and 5-0 a lot, right? And it's true, you look back through the numbers and they do keep winning that. Do you know how many games Liverpool have won by a single goal in the league? They've won 13 games by 1 goal.
Wow.
And all of those were before the break, right? Before the enforced break because of Corona. And I think that this has been a triumph of will, of finding a way. This is not the perfect football team. Like, so far away from being the perfect football team. But this is a team that will do anything to try to find a way, to find some kind of path to victory, even when it seems that it's not possible. And I think they approached the start of the season after what happened last season, right? So the 97-point season last season, and Man City winning. I don't even want to think about how many games on the spin Man City won at the end to win the league. Incredible performance. I think they started the season thinking the only way we are going to do this is by winning every single game. And when you look at those performances, you look at those results, particularly at the start of the season, what was it? I think it was 8 wins. I think it was 8. Then the draw against Man United. So, away at Man United, that's hardly a blip, right? But still, a little blip. And you think, all right, I wonder what happens then. And then, bang, 18 more wins. And of those 26 games, right, I defy you to find more than a half dozen where Liverpool, won at a canter, won Man City style, right? Like I say, 13 games by a single goal. But there were plenty more where it was like 2 goals and, maybe it was a late goal for Liverpool, or it could have gone the other way, or there were moments. There were so few sort of 4-1s, 5-1s, 5-0s, anything like that. There was almost nothing like that. And I think that what this was is this embracing of the fact that to win this, it's about those inches. Like, I don't know if any of you remember the Al Pacino speech in Any Given Sunday where he talks about the inches. And I think that's that Liverpool team. And I love Liverpool for that. I love it that it's just been those inches.
Definitely. I mean, I'll show off my age as well in that I've never seen Liverpool win the league. And the team that I liken this Liverpool team to, I'm sure Liverpool fans will love it, is the Ferguson era Man United. It's that grinding out. Everyone talked about Fergie time. Everyone talked about those late wins. And as you say, it's not perfect, but it's the sign of champions to grind those single goal wins out. And when you're not playing well and you need to get a goal, someone chipping in with a goal. It doesn't need to be your front three. It could be Van Dijk. It could be a Henderson. And I think that's really been the sign of this Liverpool Championship team.
I don't actually remember them winning the league. I remember Michael Thomas at Anfield. Okay, that's what I do remember. But the front three for me they're amazing. That make them good to watch. Van Dijk is unbelievable. The goalkeeper Alisson has been super. But if you've got Mane, Salah, or Firmino on your team, you're always gonna have a chance, and that might move us on to Mr. Jordan Henderson.
Well, I think it does actually, yeah, because in that spirit, with that framing of what this Liverpool team is like, I did think a lot about this. Who's your favourite? Who's the player of the season and so on, and who's the most important player? And I think if you do it with your head, I've never seen a footballer like Virgil van Dijk. Actually, I think the moment he came to the club, he had this effect on the club. It was almost like there's never been anyone like that. And you look at him and he almost feels superhuman, And then you look at people like Salah and you look at Mane, and of course, they're wonderful, wonderful players. But if you try to sum it up really about what this Liverpool team means, I think you have to look at Jordan Henderson actually, because he's that sort of player who just drives the team forward and helps them find a way. And someone who watches a lot more Liverpool games than me even, is that if you look really closely at what Henderson does, he will, if there's a player who's struggling a little bit during a game, he will do something really simple. He will go and play next to that player. So he will go and just give that player a little outball for 5 minutes, 2 minutes even, or whatever. So if a defender is struggling a little bit, if a defender has just like gone off the ball slightly, he will do little things like that. He'll just go and stand next to them. He'll try and calm them down, and he'll give them an easy outball. And I think that's amazing.
So you're saying Jordan Henderson is your player of the year, Kev?
I've got a thing, and if you don't mind indulging me one more time,
Go ahead.
I have a thing where lockdown for you. I don't know what lockdown was like for you, but I was in Spain, right? So I
excuse us.
I travel back and forward to Spain because where my family is, and so I was in lockdown for Spain for 10 weeks. And it just coincided with Disney Plus being launched, right? So I watched with my family during lockdown 22 Marvel universe films, one after the other, and then because lockdown went down for such a long time, I watched them all over again. So this is amazing. So whenever I think of comparisons, whenever I think of frames of references, I can only think about Marvel universe films now. Anyway, so I was trying to think, right? So who's this? Like, there are two captains in the Marvel universe. I don't know how well you know this, and your audience will know this. The two very prominent captains in the Marvel universe. One is Captain Marvel, wonderful film, tremendous superhero, but she's amazingly powerful. The other one's Captain America, right? And this is the thing. So this is what I think he's like, right? So before Captain America becomes the super soldier, he's this like quite weedy guy, but he has this tremendous kind of commitment to the cause and commitment will do absolutely anything. And he's got this famous line in the film where he's getting beaten up whenever he's getting the kicked out of him. He always says, "I could do this all day." And I think that's Jordan Henderson. I think no matter how badly it's going, he's the guy who will pick himself up and say, "I could do this all day." And so for me, yeah, he's like the pre-super soldier Captain America. He doesn't have the superpowers that a lot of them have. He's not the most gifted footballer, but for me, for that, he's player of the season.
But would he be the player of the season if Liverpool didn't have those front three players?
Yeah,
those guys around him, I just think he's a little bit limited in terms of ability that, for example, someone like De Bruyne. Now, De Bruyne can go ahead and break the assist record today. That's my player of the season. He can open a game up and change it. I've watched Jordan Henderson live here, Salzburg, Liverpool in the Champions League. His work rate is out of this world. He just doesn't stop. He's a workhorse. And I think if you've got players around you of the class Liverpool have, it makes him look even better, But I think without those players, is he the same player?
Well, for me, it's more a case of I look at Jordan Henderson and I now see a Liverpool captain. I see somebody who exudes that kind of success that most Liverpool captains did. You go back to Souness, you go back to players like that. He has that little bit of swagger. He just does it in a different way to somebody like Gerrard. He demanded the absolute best of everybody all the time. And Jordan Henderson does it in a different way. He still has high standards, but he finds this way to get extra bits out of his team. And I think, you ask if Liverpool would have won the league without the front three. Would they have won the league without Jordan Henderson? And I don't know if they do.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one, I think. And I think it is that he's like an amalgam of former Liverpool captains in a way. And I think Gerrard was an outlier. He was like such a strange player, a special player, and flawed in his way as well, right? And rival fans, take great delight in pointing out those flaws. But of course, he wasn't like the world's greatest footballer. He was who he was. He does almost remind me of throwback players. He is almost a throwback. I think he's an old-fashioned team captain.
He's also an ex-Sunderland player, so maybe that's why I'm not a fan. I mean, also,
you're not having it, JP. Are you?
No, I'm not. No, I mean, I wouldn't compare him to Gerrard. Gerrard was hated by rival fans, but I mean, I seen a clip recently of some of the goals. He scored 10. He was guaranteed 10, 15 goals a season, and they're coming from 30, 25 yards, free kicks. Everything. He was amazing. But yeah, I think the PFA have given Henderson the Player of the Year, and yeah, Liverpool, first time in 30 years, they had to give it to someone. I thought maybe Van Dijk would have got it, but, I suppose it's good for him being the captain. And is he captain of England now as well?
Yeah, I think so, yeah. Or Harry Kane. Actually, I'm not sure.
It's Harry Kane.
It might well be Harry Kane, but he certainly has done it. But yeah, I think it's interesting, and I think you say you'd probably give it to a Liverpool player. I know you mentioned Man City, and there are lots of amazing candidates, of course. But yes, it's normal, isn't it, to give it to the... to give it to someone from the winning team, and I think there are some other candidates, aren't there?
Yeah, I mean, as we said, we look at De Bruyne. I think Raheem Sterling had a great season. If I'm to give like a massive outlier, I think Declan Rice had a phenomenal year. He took the mantle on that West Ham team as Mark Noble steadily declines, and he's getting on in age. Declan Rice is rightly put in some amazing performances, which is attracting the likes of the top four, and they're talking about a big move, a £50 million move, etc. Chelsea fans apparently think they're getting him for £5 million. I don't think that's going to happen, but
yeah. But one other thing is, the weird thing about this season for Liverpool, again, just trying to sum it up, is that I think the reason why people have settled on Jordan Henderson is that those other great players who, of course, are better or more influential on their day. Is very few Liverpool players were so consistent throughout the season, apart from Van Dijk. I think Van Dijk would be the obvious one, but a lot of them blew hot and cold. So there was a time at the start of the season where, actually, people probably don't remember, but Firmino and Fabinho are kind of hauling, keeping the side in it. Mane has been brilliant, but perhaps not every single game. Same with Salah, right? We've seen, it's hot and cold. I don't know if that's quite what it is, but just very few players have managed to have that consistency. The goalkeeper, Alisson, of course, was lost for a few games through injury and so on. I think it's been one of those seasons where it's hard to pick out anyone who's been that consistent. I think that's probably why just people have settled on this player who throughout it all, it's felt like he's the go-to guy when things are not going right. And I think that is actually a special quality. And for me, sort of sums up or epitomises what's been the season for Liverpool this year and why they've won the league.
They've also been great to watch as well, even for the neutral. I mean, I'm by far away definitely not a Liverpool fan, but they've been fantastic for the neutral to watch. On the break, they're amazing. They can hit you, and for me, one of the most underrated players is Alexander-Arnold. Mm-hmm. The free kicks from anywhere, he's so quick. His passing, his crossing into the box, reminded me of a young David Beckham.
I think again, you're seeing. I think it's something like 13 assists. Could have been many more. Liverpool have been pretty funny in front of goal this season. Just watching, I don't know if anyone here, watched the Burnley game that Liverpool played where they failed to win at home for the first time this season. And really, honestly, there was a monumental performance from the goalkeeper, if we're getting on to players of the season, goalkeeper of the season. Alexander-Arnold, in the last second there, his assist could have led to a Liverpool win. I think, you're talking about a player there who has to some extent done something very rare in football, who's made you think again about how a certain position can be played. So it's not just the fact that he scores, that he has assists. It's not just the case that he'll, not one into the top bin, from a free kick or in a pressure game against Chelsea or something like that. It's the fact that he's made people actually sort of rethink about what a fullback can be. And I think that's pretty, you have Robertson on the other wing who does something, similar in terms of its effectiveness, but perhaps more traditional at least. But Alexander Finger makes you think, I didn't really think about that position that way. And I wonder if he were to be lost for Liverpool, I wonder if there's absolutely anyone else who could deputise for him, apart from perhaps one of the kids in the youth team. And that's one of the interesting things as a Liverpool fan, is I don't think Liverpool are going to go out and spend hundreds of millions of euros this during the close season. I think what they're going to try to do instead is to try to create the conditions in the club where they have like this kind of house style, and they're trying to bring in players who can slot into those positions. And again, that's what I meant at the very start of what I was talking about, is it's not just about winning the title. It's the fact that for the first time in a long time, you feel in these 3 years or so that there's this style of play in the club that makes it feel like it's really quite special.
Thanks, Kev. Thanks a million for that. Guys, we're coming to the end of the show now. Just to remind you, we'll be back in 4 weeks' time on the 23rd of August at 1 p.m. discussing the preview to the new season and the Champions League. Fino, Kevin, thanks a million for your insight. This has been fantastic first show, and I'm really looking forward to the rest of them.
Yeah, thanks very much for having me. It was a good discussion, and I think looking forward to watching the games now.
No, and absolutely, and always wonderful to ramble on about the Avengers, and give me half a chance, I'll do it again.
Well, hopefully the Avengers can do the St. James's Park today and avenge the defeat at Anfield. My prediction is Newcastle 1, Liverpool 0. This has been the Football Hour. This has been JP, Fino and Kevin, and guys, see you all next month. Welcome to the Football Hour, bringing you results, goals and updates from Europe's top leagues. Only on Radio Fabrique 107.5 FM and broadcasting around the world on radiofabrique.at.